Yo guys, back at it again now. Back at it guys. Been filming videos outside guys. Imagination to reality, that is like the topic of this video, man. Imagination to reality, that is going to be like the topic of this video now. Imagination to reality, that is the topic of this video guys. Just checking everything's okay. I don't want to get like too much into like the technical side now. Let's just get into this video guys. The topic of this video guys is going to be about imagination to reality guys. If you look around our world, a lot of it was born from the human imagination. Certainly, especially regarding like civilization, like a lot of the technology that we have, the infrastructure, the art and the culture, all of that stuff guys, it came from the human imagination. Isn't that kind of interesting? A lot of our world, it all came out of the human imagination. I'll try and explain to you what I mean by this. It's so interesting, man. It's so fascinating once you actually think about this, guys. That a lot of our world came from the human imagination, man. Came out of the human imagination. Isn't that so interesting, man? I swear. The human imagination is so powerful. Computers, books, writing, cars, anything that you name it, anything that you can think of guys, it all originates from the human imagination. Isn't that so interesting? Anything that you can think of regarding our like modern civilization and world, it all came from the human imagination. That's so interesting. The human imagination is so powerful guys. We used our imagination to create cars, buildings, roads, infrastructure, anything about like society and civilization. All of that stuff, it all came from the human imagination guys. Isn't that so interesting? A lot of our world is like just a byproduct of the human imagination of our ancestors, like using their brain power to think. Even language and stuff like that. Even language is like comes from like the human imagination. I think so that like I think that before certainly I do think so that I don't think that I think language actually was just like gradually just like made up by people. I think so. I don't know. I think it actually was just gradually made up by people over time. I don't think that language is like something that was just like it was like something that developed independently from us human beings. I think that we gradually were like creating words and stuff like that on our own. Isn't that so weird? Like even the way we communicate with ourselves, all the words that we use, all of these words, they were coming from the minds of like our prehistoric ancestors. Isn't that kind of funny that we literally just created a tool, basically language, to like just to communicate with ourselves? We literally made up a tool, language. Look at like all the words that I'm saying right now, all of that came from someone's head guys. It wasn't just like, so like language is so weird as well, because it's something that's like completely like fabricated and made up. Language is like something that's like totally like, it all comes from like the human imagination. Language isn't like something that is like natural, you know what I mean? Although some people would say that, well, we naturally develop language. I don't think so. I think that language is something that developed from our like, it's obviously we naturally can, I think we're naturally just prone to using languages, but I don't think that, you know, like the language that we use, I don't think that is actually, that would have naturally existed on its own. You know, like the English language, that's something that was gradually like developed and refined by the minds of our ancestors. It wasn't something that our ancestors discovered in the wild. We actually literally just invented up. Like that's kind of like a little bit weird if you think about that. Once you actually think about that guys, once you actually start to think about that a lot of our, you can like language, I think language is like the perfect example, man. I think language really is like the perfect example guys, because if you think about it, language isn't something that is like naturally discovered. Like nobody like discovered the English language or the German language or the Russian language or the Turkish language or any other type of language or the Han Chinese language or any other sort of language. Language was so, it's like all the words, the grammatical rules, all of that stuff was just gradually like developed by the minds of our ancestors. Isn't that kind of weird? We literally created the English language. It's like an invention. It's that kind of weird. Somebody, a group of people in the past, they developed the English language. Isn't that kind of weird? Or not, or the German language or the Russian language. These languages were like, they weren't natural. They didn't naturally occur in the wild. They weren't naturally acquired. They were developed over the course of our history by our ancestors. Which is kind of funny that we literally just made up like a type of way of communicating with ourselves. Isn't that kind of funny? Isn't it just like language, like imagination to reality? That is like the topic of this video, guys. So much of our world, guys. Everything you see around you, cars, like buildings, roads, infrastructure, all of that stuff, guys. It all comes from the minds of our ancestors, our prehistoric ancestors. Cars, buildings, roads, whatever you want to call it, all of that stuff was like emerging out of the minds of our ancestors. It's not something that's like supernatural. It's not like language, cars, all that stuff. It's not natural, guys. It doesn't naturally occur. It was all like emerging from the minds of our ancestors. Isn't that so funny, man? Damn, guys. It all was like coming from like the minds of our ancestors, like that is so interesting, isn't it, guys? Think about that so carefully. Language, which is like the perfect example to use, because I don't think that language is something that would be naturally discovered on its own. Think about that so carefully. As if like our ancestors, if they were like thrown into the jungle, I don't think they would be finding the English language, the Russian language, or the French language. These languages were actually we invented these languages for ourselves. Isn't that so interesting? Oh, this relates to so many different things, guys. A lot of our world, it all comes through the human imagination, if you know what I mean by that. Cars, buildings, roads, that stuff isn't naturally discovered, you know what I mean? Cars, roads, whatever you want to call it. That stuff is not naturally, it's not naturally discovered. It all comes through the human imagination, man. It's not like natural. It's not naturally occurring, you know what I mean? It's as if like you would find cars and roads in the wild or something like that. It all comes through. It all comes through. It all comes through like the human imagination. Isn't that kind of funny? Cars, roads, all of that type of stuff. That's that. It's that. All of that. Cars, roads, phones, buildings, laptops, anything like that, it all came through the human imagination. Isn't that so fascinating? A lot of our modern world, it all comes through the human imagination, guys. We think of things in our heads and we put it out into the real world. I think that's so like unique and special for us human beings. I don't think there's any other type of animal species, creature that can actually is even capable of doing that, by pulling things through their imagination and bringing it into the real world. So much of our world and stuff like that, it all came through the human imagination. Isn't that fascinating, man? That is so weirdly whimsical. It's so magical if you think about it like that. Cars, roads, TVs, all of this stuff that we have now, it all came through the human imagination. There's so much of our world, man, that it just all came out of the human imagination. But a lot of you probably don't know anything about this, guys. We literally live in like an imaginary world, guys. A fantasy world. Everything about our world is so like magical and whimsical. It's so bizarre as well. It's so interesting to think about this, guys. It all came from the human imagination. It all came through the human imagination. Our modern society, civilization, cars, buildings, roads, laptops, whatever you want to call it, it all came out of the human imagination, man. That's so weird. The buses, the roads, whatever you want to call it, all came through the human imagination, came out of the human imagination. That is so like weirdly whimsical and interesting. That's so interesting that so much of our like world, it all came from the human imagination, came out of the human imagination. Imagination to reality. Guys, we can literally like think of things in our heads and then we can bring those things into reality. It's not so interesting. Think about like cars. Someone was like thinking the invention of a car. Like cars are like so interesting because cars are everywhere, right? They're everywhere, but they're not naturally occurring. Isn't that kind of weird? something like a car, which is like something that maybe not all of us, but like some group of people, they invented the car and they put it out into the world, and now it's everywhere, you know what I mean? But it's not naturally occurring. It would have not existed if it wasn't for like the minds of very certain individuals. That's why it's so like weird to me, that imagination to reality. A lot of things in our world, a lot of things come through the human imagination. Isn't that so fascinating, guys? Again, you look at like cars aren't naturally occurring at all. Cars and like all of like these like pieces of like technology that we have in our buildings and roads, all of that stuff, it all came through the human imagination, guys. Isn't that so fascinating and interesting and wild? Cars, buildings, roads, all of this stuff is not naturally occurring, you know what I mean? If you go to like some jungles in Africa, you don't find like cars, buildings, roads. You don't find computers, technology. All of that came from the human imagination. That's why it's so fascinating to me, man, that from imagination to reality, so much just comes through our imagination. The human imagination is so powerful. You guys honestly can't even like, I can't even like properly talk about this. Like the human imagination is so powerful, guys. I don't think that there's like freaking anything that can come close to like the power of our imagination, because if you think about it, like everything about our world, it all came through the human imagination. Certain individuals in our past, they were conceptualizing, thinking of different things, and they were trying to bring those things into reality, and that's why it's so like powerful, the human imagination as a tool. I don't think there's anything that can come close to like the power of our imagination, man. The human imagination is so like powerful, it's so like profound. Honestly, look around you, guys. Everything you see around you, it all came through the human imagination. Buildings, roads, cars, anything like that, it all was like emerging from our imagination. And that is like so fascinating to me, that we can like literally like pull things from our mind, our mentality, and then we can bring it out into the real world. And that is so insane, that literally we can like pull things from our imagination and then bring it out into the real world. It's so wild, man. So weird. The human imagination, guys, is so powerful and profound. Honestly, I don't think there's anything that can come close to like the power of our imagination. Think about it, guns, weaponry, nuclear bombs, all of that stuff, guys, it all came out of the human imagination. There's so much that comes just from our imagination. Even language, look at like the words that I'm saying right now, all of this came from someone's imagination. Some people in our past, they were like developing these words and the rules of this like language I'm using right now. And then so even like language that we use, it's all like everything's so like, everything kind of just comes from the human imagination. I remember in SpongeBob, imagination, when SpongeBob puts his two hands aside and he talks about imagination, guys, that is more real than you would like to believe. A lot of our world, guys, it all emerges out of the human imagination. Guns, anything that you can think of, it all comes from like someone's imagination. It's like this different side to our brains. It's like weird mystical side, and in that mystical side, like even like mathematics, even like think about any piece of like, think about anything to do with like civilization and society. All of it comes from like even the alphabet, and everything just emerged from like someone's imagination. If you trace it backwards, they all came from someone's imagination. Buildings, or someone thought of like the original design for the road or the building. Some prehistoric people in our past, they thought of these things and they brought it into like reality, man. It's so wild, man. It's so weirdly whimsical as well. Buildings, roads, cars, knives, guns, nuclear bombs, all of that came from someone's imagination. Bro, that is so interesting, man. That is so fascinating and wild. The human imagination is so powerful, man. The human imagination is so powerful, guys. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it. The power of the human imagination. Buildings, roads, cars, language, all of that came out of someone's imagination, and then they forced it upon the world, and now we have it everywhere around us. Cars, buildings, roads, all of that came out of someone's imagination, and now it's all around us, guys. Isn't that so fascinating and wild? The power of the human imagination is so insane. The human imagination is so powerful, guys. A lot of you probably don't even like realize this, guys. That's so much of our world. It all came through the human imagination. It all comes from the human imagination. That's so wild, guys. Isn't that wild? I don't think there's anything that doesn't like relate to our imagination. Anything that's modern in our world, cars, buildings, roads, nuclear bombs, guns, any piece of like any type of sophisticated technology, it all, guys, originates from like some person's imagination in our history. Even like the language that I'm using to communicate with you in this video, that most likely comes from like some prehistoric person in our history. They created this type of language, the rules, the grammar, the words. It came from some person in our history, some person's imagination. Now it's with us today. So much of our world, guys, it all comes from the human imagination. It all comes from the human imagination, guys. Isn't that so wild and insane? Oh, I feel very relaxed in this environment, guys. Anyway, lumberjacks cut the trees down. Damn, looks pretty sick, guys. The human imagination is so powerful, guys. You can't underestimate it. Nuclear bombs, submarines, computers, technology, cars, books, electronics, all of that came from someone's imagination. A lot of you guys actually don't really truly appreciate the power of the human imagination. How powerful something like our imagination is, like so powerful and profound. You guys, a lot of you probably don't really appreciate like how powerful our imagination is. The way as a tool, as like a power in and of itself, like the human imagination, guys, is so remarkable that we can like merely pull things from our heads, bring it out into the real world. Cars, computers, electronics, and whatever you want to call it. Everything you see around you, guys, it all came through the human imagination. It's not naturally occurring at all. The human imagination is so powerful, so profound. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it. Imagination to reality, guys. Think about this so carefully. Every like aspect of our modern world, civilization, society, it all came through the human imagination. Cars, buildings, roads, electronics, language in and of itself. All of this was like invented by the minds of our ancestors, and we literally created like a new world just using our imagination. Isn't that so weird? It's so bizarre, man. I swear. It's so like wild that we literally like created like a new world just using our imagination, man. It's so fascinating. Isn't that fascinating, man? It's so like wildly profound, man, I swear. So wild, man, I swear. It's so wildly insane that we literally like created like a new like world just using our imagination and all that. Using our imagination and stuff like that. It's like literally created like a new world, man. Just like using our imagination, man. That's so weird. Using our imagination, we literally like invented a new world around us, man. That's so freaking wild. Imagination to reality. That's so true, man. That's so true. Imagination to reality. A lot of our world, guys, it all comes from the human imagination. Cars, buildings, electronics, we literally conceptualize things, then we bring it out into the real world. We conceptualize things, then we bring it out into the real world. Isn't that so amazing, guys? Isn't that so magical, profound? That we can pull things from our imagination and bring it out into the real world. That's so insane, guys. I don't think there's anyone that can do that, man, I swear. I don't think there's anyone else that can do that. Imagination to reality and stuff like that. I don't think there's anyone that can do that. You alright? Sorry. I don't think there's anyone else that can do that, man. Yeah, well, you cast it, innit? Yeah. I thought you were someone else. Yeah, I'm filming a video here, man. You alright? Doing alright? I thought I knew you were casting, man. I thought you could be someone else. That's why I was a little bit awkward, man. You alright? Yeah. You're just filming a video. Take care, yeah. I'll tell you later on, not now. I'll tell you a little bit later on, yeah. You're just filming a video, man. Imagination to reality. Imagination to reality is so powerful, guys. A lot of our world, guys, it all comes through the human imagination, man, I swear. Isn't that so fascinating? A lot of our world, it all comes through the human imagination, man. I swear, it's so fascinating. So fascinating and interesting. That a lot of our world, it comes through the human imagination. It's not so wild, guys. It's not so insane. That a lot of our world, guys, it all comes through the human imagination. And you don't really appreciate it. Guys, you don't really appreciate how powerful that is. Guys, you don't really appreciate how powerful it is, man. How powerful the human imagination is, man. A lot of our world, a lot of everything about our world and society and civilization, it comes through the human imagination. It's so powerful. Truly is. It's quite remarkable, guys, if you actually think about this. A lot of our world, guys, it all comes through the human imagination. A lot of it, nearly everything about our world, our modern civilization, society, it all comes through the human imagination. Isn't that so fascinating and interesting, guys? Isn't that so fascinating, interesting, guys? Nearly everything about our modern civilization and world, it all comes through the human imagination. That is so freaking wild to me, man. I swear, I honestly can't even like talk about this properly, but it's so weird. Isn't it weird, guys? Cars, buildings, roads, electronics, books, all of that stuff, it all was coming through like the human imagination, man. It all is coming through the human imagination, man. That's so interesting. All was coming through the human imagination. It's all coming through the human imagination, man. That's so interesting. Cars, books, electronics, all of that type of stuff was coming through the human imagination. I don't think there's anything that naturally, like, especially regarding like our modern civilization and world, I don't think there's anything like that naturally would occur without the human imagination, like books, cars, electronics, roads, buildings. I don't think any of that would be naturally occurring on its own. Books, cars, electronics, roads, all of that stuff, guys, comes from through the human imagination. Comes through the human imagination. Books, cars, electronics, roads, comes through the human imagination. Isn't that so wild, guys, and whimsical and insane? A lot of you don't really think about this at all, that a lot of our world, guys, it came through the human imagination. A lot of you are probably ignorant, a lot of you probably don't know anything about this, do you? So insane, man. Isn't it insane that a lot of our modern world, civilization, society comes through the human imagination? That's so bizarre to me, honestly. It's kind of funny though, isn't it? It is actually very funny, man. If you think about it like that, all of the stuff that we have with us right now, buildings, cars, road, it all pretty much emerged from the human imagination. That is how powerful the human imagination is, guys. I don't think there's anything that can come close to like the power of the human mind. We literally invented and created a brand new world around us, guys. It all was coming out of the human imagination, and that's like so interesting. All of like this stuff like to do with like cars, buildings, roads, all of that, it's all like imaginary. Do you get it? It's not something that would exist if it wasn't for the human mind. Do you get it? That's why it's so interesting if you go back into your house, you pick up like an iPhone, or you pick up like your computer or whatever like that, and you use like this type of thing that's been made by someone else's imagination. It's so weird. It's not kind of funny to me, actually. It's actually very funny. You go into your house, your room, and you pick up like the phones and the computer board and all of that type of stuff. You guys, you don't really truly understand like the fact that all of this stuff is like it all was like comes from someone's imagination. It all comes from someone's imagination, man. Isn't that so interesting that all of the stuff that we have with us right now, all of this stuff, it feels like so typical, man. It feels like it's just like regular and typical, but it's actually, guys, it all like is the product of someone's imagination in our history, in our past. Pardon my language. A lot of this stuff that we have with us right now, man, it's like comes from someone's imagination. Isn't that so powerful? You go into your house, you pick up like an iPhone or a PS5, and you start playing good games and whatever. Certainly I should get back into that. I was thinking about creating a gaming series. I don't know, I should get into, maybe I might do that, I don't know. Anyway, that's like not really relevant though for the topic of this video, but guys, like, so much of our world comes through the human imagination. Isn't that kind of interesting? That's so weird, man. Damn, man. Hopefully it's not raining, man, I swear. Hopefully it's like a little bit more it's always like gloomy and stuff like that here where I am right now in England, but I don't want to get too much into that, man. Let's get into like, I actually want to kind of move, yeah, but you know, the human imagination is such a powerful tool, guys, in and of itself. The power of the human mind and the human imagination is so, I don't think there's anything that can come close to it, guys. The power of the human mind, guys, is so powerful, it's so profound. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it. The human mind, human imagination and all that. So I don't think there's anything that can come close to it and all that, so think about it so carefully and stuff like that. Cars, books, electronics, roads. You go back into your house, you might pick up a PS5, an iPhone, whatever. Guys, all of that came from someone's imagination. Isn't that so interesting? Steve Jobs and whatever you want to call it, these people in our past, they brought things through their imagination, through their mind, into reality. Mathematics, the Hindu Arabic numerals, that came from someone's imagination. You get it? These things aren't naturally occurring on their own. Do you know what I mean? These things, they only exist because of the fact that someone in our past, they used their imagination to bring these things into existence. You have to, guys, you have to tap into that. You have to learn how to utilize your imagination, the power of your mind. You have to do that, guys. You have to tap into that, like that type of creative energy in your mind, because that's what really that's what really shapes the world around us, guys. It's literally just like the human imagination, our psyche. I don't think there's anything else that can come close to that, man. I don't think there's anything else that can come close to that. The power of the human imagination, the human mind, man. So much of our world, it all came through the human imagination. Someone someone in our past, they used their mental faculties to like create all of this stuff that you see around you right now, man. It's so like like you have to really try and tap into like the creative energy of the human imagination, man. That's so interesting and important. The human mind is so powerful, guys. I don't think there's anything that can come close to like the power of the human mind, our imagination, and all that type of stuff, man. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it, man. The power of like the human mind and stuff like that, and the human imagination is so powerful that we can like pull things from our imagination and we can bring it into like the real world. That's so like powerful, man. I swear. The creative energy, that creative force, that energy that's inside of your head is such a weird mystical thing. Like the human psyche, the human imagination, it's so powerful and mystical, because you can go into your house, you can pick up a PS5, an Xbox, whatever, and stuff like that. Guys, you don't realize that comes from someone's imagination. Isn't that so powerful? I think that everything you see around you right now, it all came through someone's imagination, guys. Like cars, electronics, books, that stuff that wouldn't naturally exist on its own. That comes from someone's imagination. This creative force inside of us, guys, the human imagination is so powerful and profound. It's so wildly insane that a lot of you are probably very ignorant about this, like how powerful the human imagination is. Literally, guys, everything about our modern world, it all is like a product of the human psyche, the human imagination. But you guys, you don't really truly, maybe some of you, but I think a lot of you don't properly truly appreciate like the beauty of the human mind, our mental faculties, like how we can use our mental energies to like literally engineer a new world around us. Isn't that so insane, guys? We can use like our mental energies to engineer a world around us. Isn't that so wild, guys? All just using our mental energies and faculties, we can literally use that and we can like bring new things into this world. That's so powerful, man. That is so powerful and brilliant, guys. Everything you see around you, guys, it all came through someone's imagination. It all came through someone's imagination. That is so like brilliant. Isn't that brilliant, guys? It all came through someone's imagination, guys. It all came through someone's imagination. That's so insane. It all came out of someone else's imagination, someone else's mind. That's so like the human imagination is so powerful, guys. There's nothing else that can come close to it. The human imagination, psyche, so powerful, man. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it. The human imagination, the human mind, everything you see around you, guys, it all is a product of the human imagination. The human mind is like creative energy inside of us, guys. We use it and then we use our minds and then we manifest things into the real world. That is so powerful, guys. Isn't that is actually quite amazing, guys, honestly. Like the power of the human mind, the creative force that's inside of our psyches, we can use it, harness that energy, guys, and we can bring new things into this world. And it's quite saddening that a lot of you probably don't know about this like type of creative force, this ability to like bring something new into this world, guys. It's inside of all of us, guys. Isn't that kind of insane? We all have like this like type of ability to bring new things into this world through like this creative energy, the human imagination, the human psyche, all of that stuff, the creative force, this creative like energy that's inside of all of us. Think about it, guys. Everything you see around you, guys, it all came through the human imagination, this creative energy, this force that's all inside of all of us. We can tap into that and we can bring like almost like a wizard, like engineer a new world around us and stuff like that. It's so brilliant, guys. Everything you see about around us, guys, it all is like a product of the human mind, using this like creative energy and force. Using the creative energy and force that's inside of our minds, we can use that, we can bring new things into this world. Isn't that so insane, guys? The human mind, it's so powerful, guys. This creative energy, the creative force inside of our minds. Using that, we can use like this type of like energy, almost like like some type of property that our minds and brains have. We can use that. We can bring new things into this world, guys, just using our imagination, our minds. And that's what's that is like the case, guys. Look around you, guys. Everything you see around you, the buildings, the roads, the car, the infrastructure, cars, buildings, roads, everything like that, all of that stuff, guys, it's all just a product of the human mind. Literally, there's nothing that you see around you in this modern civilization and world that isn't like a product of someone's mind. Everything you see around you just came from someone's imagination. Isn't that kind of funny? There's like a lot of things in our world, they all just came through someone else's imagination, and that is so bizarre and wild. Isn't that insane, guys, and whimsical? Isn't that wild and insane? Everything you see around you, guys, it all came through someone else's imagination, and that is like so brilliant. Think about that so carefully. Isn't that wild, guys? Isn't that brilliant, guys? Everything you see around you, it all came through someone else's imagination. That's so brilliant, guys. That is so brilliant, man. I think like the human imagination of it on its own, that is like such a powerful like creative tool, creative energy. I don't think there's anything that can come close to like the power of the human mind, the human imagination. Everything you see around you, guys, it's all a product of the human mind. Guys, the human mind, everything you see around you is just like a product of the human mind. That is so powerful, man. That is so powerful. Isn't it powerful, guys, that the human mind is like creative energy and force that's inside of us all. We use that and we bring new things into this world just using our minds and our imaginations, this creative force, this creative energy that we all have. It's so powerful, guys. It's such a tremendous amount of power that we all get born with, like this creative energy, this creative force to bring new things into this world. The human imagination, the human mind psyche is such a powerful tool, guys. Language, everything about our world, it all was emerging from our ancestors' imagination. Isn't that so interesting and whimsical, guys? The human imagination is such a powerful tool of its on its own, the creative energy, this creative force that's inside of us. And we can use our minds and our imagination. We can literally like engineer a brand new world around us. That is so wildly insane. That is so wildly insane. That's so wildly insane, man. I swear, I don't think there's anything that can come close to that. The power of the human mind, human imagination, guys. We can use our creative force, this like energy that we all have inside of us. We can use it and we can bring new things into this world, guys. That is quite honestly astonishing, isn't it? Astonishing and wild and insane and whimsical. The creative energy, this creative force, where does it come from, guys? Regarding like human evolution, I wonder when our prehistoric ancestors start to develop this type of ability to like think conceptually and to use like their imaginative like powers to create new things in this world. The stone axe, the prehistoric tools our ancestors were using, all of that came from the imagination. Now we used our imagination to have cars and buildings and roads. The human imagination is such a weird, mystical thing. Wonder when our ancestors start to use their imaginations to like change the world around them. Now I think that the power of our imagination has completely transformed the entirety of our world around us. All of this world that we see around us now, it's all just like a product of the human imagination, the human mind, and that is so wild. The creative energy, the creative force of the human mind, it's so insane, it's untapped. It's so like, it's uncomparable, it's incomparable to anything else, guys. This like creative energy, this creative force. I don't think there's anything that can come close to it at all. The human mind, the human imagination is like completely unmatched by anything else. Imagination to reality. Guys, think about this. Everything that you see around us in this modern day and age, computers, phones, cars, electronics, all of that stuff, guys, it comes through, or it came from the human imagination.